Here we are, my friends. Part 2. Actually, it's part 3 of our 5-part on negotiation. We've got Will Padilla with us today. Will is in SaaS, but Will actually started in logistics. So we're going to do a little bit of a blending conversation for y'all today here on SalesChatter.
Welcome to the HPLS podcast. Live, relevant, and high performance information, conversations, and education weekly.
Hey everybody, welcome back. So our guest today is Will Padilla, and let me tell you, I just got to start with this. So I found Will just watching a video. I think it was right after I had liked one of Ingram's videos. Will popped up, and he was talking about the book, The Slight Edge, and just some of the sales strategies in it and what it meant to him. And I got the book, and as y'all know right now, that's actually the book club this month. So I reached out to Will. I said, listen, I got to talk to you because I want to talk to you about negotiation. I want to talk to you about all the different things that happen in sales that we as logistics sales reps were always trying to enhance and grow. And through the conversation, before we hit the cameras going live, I found out Will was in logistics. So Will, I'm excited that you were actually in logistics, in carrier sales, like you understand the industry, and now we're going to talk about negotiation. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for introducing me to that book.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. I love that you've been following my content and appreciate the personal message that you sent me, the video. I was like immediately, hey, yeah, I'll absolutely be on your podcast. I appreciate the extra effort. It certainly got my attention because I get maybe 50 or 75 messages a week from people wanting to pitch me something or to do something with my company I represent now. And so it's hard for me to keep track of everything. But videos or voice notes, I will always take priority for, and I always respond almost immediately.
I actually did notice that because I sent you an invite to connect, and it took a couple of days. And when I sent you the video, you got back to me right away saying, dude, that was awesome. Yeah, man, I'm in. Yeah. So, I really want to dive in here because I want to make sure we give the audience as much value as possible. And I know you're originated in the world of logistics, and now you're in a world of SaaS. And I'd love to know from you the comparisons when it comes to service, product, product enhancements over price. How are you guys managing that right now? And what are some of the strategies that you're using to kind of avoid that price talk?
Well, with logistics, you're offering money to someone. So it's a little bit different when I was in carrier sales where I would offer a driver. So I'd be calling with money. So it was always like a very, like obviously if someone was on a different load or if they didn't want it, they would reject me. But I would talk about money, ASAP. I'd tell them the lane, we'd negotiate. That was a little bit different. With software sales, you're not offering any money for the person. So it's a B2B business. So, you're selling software to another company, and I wouldn't say that like I ever avoid price. I think if I always make sure I bring it up, unless it's like an enterprise company or a mid-market company where I know they have the budget. But if it's a VVSB, which means a company which is less than 10 employees, which is actually like probably 20% of the companies that I talk to, budget is always a big hurdle. And the last thing I want to do is waste my time on a 45-minute demo with them, or we could just jump on a 10-minute call, understand what they're looking for and influence their software, and then do a quick check on the budget just to make sure that the price range I give them sounds good. If it sounds good, we'll book the demo, everything's good. But I've been doing this for 4 years, and you get burned too many times in the past of not doing the due diligence of making sure that someone can actually afford what you're about to pitch. It'll save you a lot of time.
You know what? I really like that point when it comes to software, because with our release of Bridger, this is actually something that's coming up more and more after demos that actually crush the deal. So I like the fact that you actually make the budget part of your qualifying questions to figure out if they're in line in your same ballpark of your ideal client. Am I right with that?
If they're a small business, so like you have to use your best judgment. So if someone has, more than 100 or 150 employees, they're likely going to have the budget because they are actually showing that they are hiring a lot of people. So there's cash flow running through that business. But when you're talking to a small brand, or a small company that has less than 10 employees, less than 20, less than 30, it's important to bring out the budget because you can already tell that these guys might be strapped for cash. And honestly, people appreciate it too, because they don't want to waste time. And they might have seen a competitor, which is like $100 a month or something like that, and then that's what they're expecting, and then when you give them the price, they're like, whoa. And I'm like, okay, so it sounds like you've been accustomed to a lower price from maybe a different competitor. Yeah, I have. Okay, well, let me tell you some differences. I'm not going to get too into the differences, but this is how we differ. This is the rationale behind our price. I don't like to drink our own Kool-Aid. Look us up on G2, any software review site. We're going to be number one, and it's for a reason. So if that price sounds good to you, I'd be open to walking you through a demo so you can see it yourself. And I just move through, and people are honestly intrigued because do you want to go with the cheap option? Maybe if you're strapped for cash, but maybe you want to spend a little bit more to get a more reliable platform.
Well, I agree with you there. I think especially in the software world, I can tell you, like, from lead generation software, I had a membership for one of them that 60% of the leads aren't even verified. It's bad emails, it's garbage, and their pitch was, well, you get 1,000 a day. And I'm like, oh my God, 1,000 a day. Like, I can set this thing on autopilot and I can do, but it's like your email health is just worth so much more. And there's all these other things that really came into play. And it's understanding that's why some of the other companies charge 5 times as much for completely verified data. So I get what you're saying there. What are some of the things that you as a sales rep in SaaS then would be looking at overcoming when you're talking about, like, are you more of adding, removing features to meet their price range? What is your process with that?
So I like to meet buyers where they're at. So if they feel that our platform is the platform of choice for them, they're very confident, they want to move forward, but price is the only blocker, I'm confident that we can figure out a win-win situation and get them in the door to have their dream software for influencer marketing. Obviously within reason. If they're saying really low numbers, I'll just be transparent of, like, that's not realistic, but here's what is. What do you think about this? So just meeting them where they're at and getting a deal done. Like, I think a lot of sellers are too focused on keeping the high ACV and, like, not wanting to discount, which is fine. But if the person tells you they really want to buy, they love your platform, everything else is great except the price, put on your creative hat as a seller and try and figure out what you can do for them.
I like that. And not to mention, if you meet them where they're at this time around, in a year from now, or whatever, when it's time, when the plan comes due, I guess, for lack of a better term, your software has probably helped them reach some of their goals, which means they would be able to afford it, and that's when maybe you can get more money for the actual same software. And so do you find that sometimes, because I know some reps out there are going to be saying, yeah, but Will, if I put myself in that position, I got to do it every year in that position, right? We see it a lot in logistics, like on the reverse side of carrier sales. You'll have customers call you up, say, okay, well, I got this load from Chicago to Miami, and the going rate's $2,700. And you're like, whoa, no. The going rate's like $3,500. Like, oh, no, a carrier did it for me last week at 27. So it's almost as if they've now set that expectation in the customer's mind that here's the cost for it. Right? Do you find similar things when it comes to renewing contracts or renewing the annual fees or that kind of thing with some of your SaaS customers?
I mean, so our goal is that they grow with us as they start at the low plan and be able to get the same price that they started with at the renewal. Now, hopefully they added on some stuff to make it a little bit more expensive, which is great. But the difference with SaaS and logistics is, as a SaaS company, the first year is hard to make money when you sign a customer to a 1 year. You'll make a little money, but you have to pay, like, the R&D and all the learning and development that comes into, like, the first year with a customer. But most SaaS companies the margins are crazy, especially as you start dipping into like the 3rd year renewal. Like there's hardly any L&D time spent with that customer because they don't need any help. They've been in for 3 years. They know what's going on. They're very self-sufficient. So the margins are huge. So like in software, I'm okay giving maybe a lower rate to a brand that's like, I know for sure going to love our software and going to be with us for years and years, because we have clients who have been with us for 9-10 years. That's high margins. And the customers know it. I mean, everyone knows that in software sales, the first year or two are kind of hard to make a huge margin on, but once you start dipping into like 3+ years, I mean, you're making crazy high margins. Unlike logistics, where I mean, the margins are so slim. You mentioned, okay, you found one driver, but like, dude, like, we don't have the money to play with. Like, we need more room to play with to get this load done. That's where it starts getting into the danger zone, where logistics is much different than software. There's software, it's a technology that's going to be the same and remain the same. It's always the same. Logistics is constantly changing of drivers, weather conditions, the amount of weight that's on the truck. It's going to really, every single load is different. And where every single piece of software that we dish out is the same. It's the same code, it's the same this. And that's why I personally love software sales, where it's so consistent. I know what I'm putting out. I know the product. I know the customer. The 15 customers I just signed up, this past month or last month, whatever, all got the same tech. They maybe didn't get as many features, but it's all the same tech, all the same code. It's not going to break. If it does break, we have engineers. We'll fix it. It never breaks. It's very reliable. Logistics, I'm like, no. We cannot do discounts. We need to have the money to play with. Like that, you just can't. You can't risk that.
Well, no, I mean, you start discounting, and you might have to take off the bottom of the barrel instead of the top of the barrel, right? When it comes to value and service, and it's one thing we talked about before the cameras went live. The transparency in logistics of we're always putting our name on somebody else's service. Right? Whereas in software, what I'm finding very quickly is when it's a killer piece of software, the name and the credibility always stays the same. And for me, that's something I love, because I believe sales is all about image, credibility, and brand. And it's about raising somebody's status, whether you give them a piece of software, a tool, a training module, whatever it is, don't care. It's about raising their status. And are they going to be better off after it than they were before it?
Right. And products, I mean, all the books that I've ever read have been based on selling a product. So like I read the book Build by Tony Fadell, the creator of the iPod, and then also the creator of the Nest thermostat. And he talks about early in his sales career, starting off in services, but understanding the value of a product. It's that same tech, it's that same experience that someone could tangibly experience for themselves, tangibly experience on a software. It's a real experience, and it creates that buzz, it creates that brand imagery that services, it's hard to replicate time after time after time after time. Services are great, right? Because it's something that, I mean, gosh, services are something that is harder to sell, but I think you could probably make a little bit more money in services. Possibly.
I mean, I guess it would depend on obviously a lot of factors. The percentage of commission in logistics, right? So average, you're like, depending on if you're a full commission sales rep, cradle to grave, you're 30 to 60. I've been at companies upwards of 80% commission.
Right.
But the bigger piece of it is the reoccurring business with shippers, right? The fact that you can do 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 loads a day, where sometimes, software sales is a monthly kind of payment, right? As opposed to 5, 6, 7 different transactions in a day through the relationship build, right? And there's something, I mean, I've been told many times in my career, and a gentleman I used to hang out with said, Dan, here's the thing. Like, when they like you, they'll give you a load. When they trust you, they'll give you freight. And there's two completely different things, right? So I think in software sales, there's an escalation too. People go from the low tier to the mid tier to the high tier and want more services and want more things done. And it's the same process in logistics. We go from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-star customers, right? You start off with over the road, then you maybe hit some warehousing, then you maybe hit some air and ocean, then you maybe hit some rail, then you maybe hit customs, all these different things. And it's an evolution. It's a progression on the customer value journey is the way I see it.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, logistics taught me, number one, how to hustle. I mean, that gave me the hardcore foundational sales skills I needed. Being able to make 150, 200 dials a day, and have that repeatable process time and time after again. And also it helped me with negotiation, because every single load is negotiation. Obviously, if you have your boys, you can just like text them, be like, yeah, I got this load, Dallas to Houston, what's going on, $800, $750, whatever it was. And he's like, yeah, I'll be there in 20 minutes. Those guys are rare. But then, what I found out is like people change, right? People get sick. As humans, we are not robots. And I think that's why a lot of this technology is trying to go with the driverless cars. They want the AI to power these cars. They want the AI to power these trucks. Or they just want to have someone sitting there while the AI drives it to kind of like watch it and then pay them a fifth of what they'd have to pay a driver, because humans we're fragile at the end of the day. And a lot of my drivers would get sick, or they'd have things come up with their family. Unfortunately, maybe a death in the family, a job loss from one of their spouses. I mean, these things cause them to either want different loads or pull back on the ones that you've had, or just ghost you. So there's a really human element about logistics that is great, right? Those relationships, it's amazing. I really genuinely liked calling a lot of my favorite drivers, but also at the same time understanding that that's driver you have today will not be the driver you have in 5-10 years. The driver may never be there again. And obviously software is never the same software. Products are never the same product, but you can kind of always expect a level of upgrade. You really, with software and products, you can never expect downgrade. You can always expect upgrades. I mean, look at your iPhone today, right? This is an iPhone 13. Obviously, it's cracked out in the back, but we started with a very small iPhone 3 that had a little touch home button, didn't have many features. The iPhone's never regressed. It's always improved. Where you could say the opposite with human services, the service is likely going to regress in some form of capacity as people get older.
Yeah, I think we've regressed over the last couple of years when it comes to overall service in many industries.
Yeah.
The one big thing about logistics too is it's so people-based that even if you work with a supplier, so you work with a carrier, the guy running the freight at that carrier might be awesome, and all of a sudden they leave, and the service level drops, like it literally falls off the edge of a cliff, brother, a lot of the times, right? And that's another element to logistics. That's kind of like, okay, there's no baseline, whereas a software, there's a baseline. Here's the foundation of the software, here's the functioning, here's all the different common files, here's how it processes. How do we improve it? And that's the question I find asking myself every day, is how do I improve it? And then for me, when it comes to software, it's like, well, what if we do this, this, and this? I'm like, oh, that usability feature just enhanced by tenfold. Whereas in logistics, it's myself, then my customer, then the supplier, then the shipper, then the receiver. You can have 5 different people involved in one shipment. And in order to be synchronistic and all work together, you got to have the same common goals, right? And that's one thing that I find was always, don't get me wrong, I still enjoy it because I love that piece of business. But I do find some days it burns me out way faster than software. Huge.
Yeah, I mean, software definitely still gets me like really tired. Like today before this call, like all I've been doing is prospecting cold calls, getting hang-ups, sending personalized emails, and it's just this constant. But less slight edge effect. What you do today, you're going to see in 30, 60, 90 days down the road. And so I just know, okay, what did I do 30 days ago? Okay, I need to do this to get there. Like what got me here won't get me there. You know what I mean? So I have to do these repeatable tasks that are always consistent. So I know, okay, I don't have to really worry too much, even if I'm in a slow time, because I know the work that I've been putting in. Or if I'm in a really up time, oh, okay, that's from 90 days ago. Like, all of this is kind of rolling in now. So software sales is still very difficult. I'd say software sales is by far the most innovative sales industry. We set the tone, we set the trend for every other industry. So video prospecting, all the technology tools that are used to get buyer intent from prospects, all the tech that's created to make selling easier and selling better starts in tech sales, and it kind of flows to every other industry kind of thereafter. A lot of these innovative tactics kind of start with software sales, but the basics started with logistics, all these other door-to-door services. You still have to pick up the phone, you still have to send personalization, you still have to have a relationship with your prospects. That's never going to go away.
I love that. So in closing, brother, because I know we got to get moving, but I really want to get your take on kind of 3 ways that you approach sales. By all means, share with us a few of the Slight Edge strategies if you want, because we're going to have you back once we're done our book club on the Slight Edge.
Nice.
And then just kind of what you would suggest to any sales rep watching that's saying, you know what, Will, like, I'm having a hell of a time, man. I'm beating my head against the wall and I feel like nothing's happening. What would you share to people that are in that position right now, regardless of the industry?
Yeah, I mean, I've been there, like, time and time again. I was telling Dan earlier that I've been in sales since I was 19 years old. That was my first logistics internship, was when I was 19. And so I'm 27 now. I'll be 28 this June. So it's been a while, and I haven't stopped. I've always been in sales. And there's those moments where you're like, man, I just feel like I'm banging my head against the wall, and I don't know what to do. The first thing I'd say is make sure you're at the right place. Make sure you're selling something that you're really passionate in, because if you're not passionate about what you're selling, if you don't actually believe it, the buyer is always going to know. And it doesn't matter how hard you work, if you don't believe in your product wholeheartedly, you're never going to sell anything. You're never going to be top level. So fall in love with your product. If you can't fall in love with your product, go somewhere else. But be able to fall in love with your product, be able to have that conviction when you talk to buyers, and that's going to come through when you're doing your outbound prospecting. So if you're feeling like you're really low right now, start making some calls, start making some emails, start making some videos, and do this day in, day out, but have that conviction that you're calling them with a software that you really believe can help them, or you're really calling them with a service that you know will help them. You can look them in the eyes, dead serious, and tell them you have the best service, you have the best product, because you know in your heart it's true. But if you do not know in your heart it's true, the buyer will be able to tell that, and they're going to get scared and they're going to walk away. It's that confidence of your buying. I was listening to a podcast with Andy Elliott. Andy Elliott is one of the...
Andy.
Love him, and he's right here in Scottsdale. So Andy, the podcast was talking about falling in love with your product or service. Andy knows when he walks into a room and they're evaluating all these other sales training companies, he's like, I'm going to tell you how ours is the best. And you can hear it in his voice that everything in his body to mind, everything, believes that they have the best sales training process. And when you meet someone like that, you're like, I don't know what you just said, but I want to work with you. Let's make a deal. And you're just like, this guy is convicted. He's really about it, and I can tell he really wants to help me. And that's how I am with my software sales. Is like when I talk to brands about influencer marketing, I really want to help them. I genuinely believe that if they, based on what they say, if it sounds like we can be a fit, there's no reason why that we can't work together. Now, if they're not a fit, have that confidence to turn them away. But you're only going to get, you're going to get through the tough time. It's just a fact. And you're going to have really, really good times. You're going to be like, this is awesome. But that too will pass. So you have to remain consistent as you go throughout your sales career. Sales is very humbling, fun, and all the above.
I love that. I love the fact at how you started with that. And I love all 3 of those strategies that you had. I suggest all of you watching and listening to this, go back and listen to this again, whether you're watching it live or you're watching it on the YouTube channel or even listening to it on the podcast. Go back and listen to what Will just said there. right? Because I think a lot of you, why you're not seeing the success you want is because of your belief in what you're doing. And specifically in logistics, I mean, full transparency again, Will, like we were talking, and the one big thing about logistics for me is everything that I talk about when it comes to value, service, being there for them is on somebody else's shoulders. And if that person doesn't have the same values, the same understanding, the same beliefs about business and the overall completion of my customers' goals, I'm leaving it to chance. I really am. And this is where, if I've hated one thing in logistics from day one, it's the fact that I have to put my service on somebody else, right? And for me, that was one of the biggest things. And for close to a decade, I couldn't get over it. And I won sales. Don't get me wrong. I was productive.
Yeah.
But when I got over that, Will, and when I started realizing, I need the right people on the bus. So as a sales rep, you need the right company on the bus that you want to sell for.
Yep.
B, when I realized that, you know what? This is value. Like, this is valuable to make sure that salespeople aren't getting called at companies saying, where in the F is your shit? And like, there's all sorts of shit that hits the fan when the trucks don't show up on time, right? So I realized the value, and I could tell you, when I realized those two factors, 50x my business over what felt like overnight, brother. And it was incredible, because I would just start talking and having conversations with somebody, and it wasn't even like I was selling. Like, it just becomes this passionate conversation, and the person's like, I'm in, and I'm like, oh yeah, we didn't even talk about it. They're like, yeah, I don't really care, I'm in, let's go. And it's like, oh, okay, maybe there is a little trick to this, right? But Andy Elliott, I was actually going to ask you where you were, because I saw one of your last videos that I saw was all the mountains in the background. I wasn't sure if that was a California mountain range or an Arizona mountain range, but.
Yep, Arizona, good old Arizona. There's a lot of good energy here in Arizona. A lot of people who, it's underrated. People don't talk about Arizona. They talk about, New York or Chicago. Well, I think a lot of people now are just like New York, LA, Chicago maybe. I think their business environment's kind of slowing down. I'm from Chicago, but it's sad to see a lot of the businesses leave downtown. I grew up there, but there's a lot of hot markets. Everyone talks about Austin, LA, New York, but no one really talked about Arizona. But that's a good thing, because we have a lot of opportunity here, and I'm trying to do a lot for the community out here, the sales community. I have an in-person studio where I do podcasts, and I have like SaaS professionals from around the valley come in, and we are. The Scottsdale market is prime for a lot of innovation, so it's a good place to be.
Sweet. Next Silicon Valley, maybe. Right?
I don't know about that. We're too. I don't know if we have the. How do I put it? I just don't know if we have the tech talent yet to be there. I don't think our tech talent in the valley is at that level, but as things start to evolve, I can see us being somewhat of a really big tech hub for young tech companies that want to have a startup here or something like that.
Makes sense. Before we go, Will, let everybody know what you do and how they can get a hold of you. Because if we can get some people that say, oh my God, I need influencer marketing, I got to get a hold of Will.
Yeah, so I represent a company called Grin. We're the leading creator management platform in the space. I've been there about 4 years. So if you're a company or brand who is interested in influencer marketing, our software is designed to help you scale your program and get your brand out there and be able to drive revenue through our software. So that's where you can, if you're looking for influencers, stuff like that, you can reach out to me for that. And then I have a podcast and a personal brand by the name of Sell That SaaS. So I post tips and tricks on software sales. I got about like 16,000 followers on TikTok, primarily of just software sales professionals. So yeah, like that's what I've been up to, and it's exciting to be in this world of software sales, and it's a cool space to be in.
It is. Thank you for being here, brother. For all of you watching and listening, remember, go out there, make every call educational, and crush your sales. We'll see you next time.